Hello, we're beginning a new book today, No Frills Science Fiction. Doesn't even have an author listed, but it does say it's complete with everything. Aliens, giant ants, space cadets, robots, and one plucky girl. Published in 1981, Chapter 1. Alex skipped down the corridor in the style known system-wide as the Academy Shuffle, one foot probing ahead like a blind man's cane, the other dragging behind, wearing a groove in steel flooring. Rushed as he was, Alex still took pride in looking like a spaceman should. His cadet uniform was smartly turned out, his cap perched at the jauntiest of angles. Pursuing his headlong course, Alex swung quickly into the corridor leading to the station's hub. Just as quickly he applied the brakes, but under semi-weightless conditions, momentum had the better of him. Heart sinking in despair, he chose between the two targets that seemed to fill the narrow tube. Of the two, he chose the full bird colonel. It would have been a shame to land in the admiral's lap. The ensuing collision was muffled only by Colonel Kai's gasp for breath. The admiral was under no such restraint. "Cadet, put yourself on report. What the blazing sun did you think you were doing? And in officer's country, too. What's your name, mister?"
Cadet Harrison, sir."
"You just may not make third year, mister. What's your excuse for this outrageous behavior?" Alex was pulling himself ruefully together, while Colonel Kai continued to gasp for breath, sitting undignifiedly on the floor. In one corner of his mind, Alex searched for an answer, any answer. If only he would appease this unknown member of the top brass. Colonel Kai, he knew, was a pretty good sport.
I was called urgently to the bridge, sir. The director summoned me."
"The director?" The admiral fumed. "And just what can you do for Director Henshaw?" Colonel Kai had gained his feet and was sucking in long, strangled breaths. He was evidently trying to catch the admiral's eye, though his own were streaming and watery. Finally, he managed to gasp.
Harrison, sir. This is Cadet Harrison."
The admiral paused in mid-imprecation and gave Alex a piercing glare. What he saw must have given him indigestion, because he put his hand to his stomach and frowned even more deeply. Under his gaze, Alex was beginning to wilt visibly, but decided to try again.
"Admiral and Colonel Kai, please accept my apologies. The lieutenant instructed me to hurry here as fast as possible. I'm in my first year at the Canaveral Space Academy, and I've only been station-wide for 3 weeks. At first I was worried that I'd never be able to navigate for myself up here. Now I'm afraid I can't stop."
This last was delivered with a sly glance at the colonel to see how he was taking it. In fact, if it weren't for the admiral's severity, Alex would scarcely have been able to suppress a grin. Damn the man anyway. Who was he?
"Well, Mr. Harrison," the admiral said, "I hope the drill sergeant will be able to help you pursue that vital portion of your lessons. In the meantime, I believe the director does require your presence on the bridge. Perhaps you'll be good enough not to keep him waiting. Step to it, mister."
The admiral led the way, with the portly Kai puffing behind him. Alex followed somewhat sheepishly, but with every step toward the bridge lock, his spirits began to pick up. He'd never been to the Ondine's bridge before, and the prospect excited him. Most cadets didn't have a chance before their second year, and he was still fresh from Earthside training camp. This was a real opportunity, and he wasn't about to look a gift horse in the mouth, even if all this was finally going to mean a pretty heavy dressing down. Alex was born to be a spaceman, and nothing, he felt, could stop him long. That he'd never been up before didn't matter. He'd been training since he was a kid, first at home in his father's observatory laboratory, later in the Boy Scouts, during long hours taking advanced space tech courses after school, and then finally during the last 9 months at the academy. Alex knew space like few of his fellow cadets, and he was determined
to make a life for himself there. The safety lock cycled slowly. Inside, the Admiral shuffled impatiently, and Alex stood rigidly at attention. Colonel Kai, quite recovered, seemed to have something on his mind and looked almost troubled. When the white safe light began to blink, the Admiral cracked the port and grabbed Alex by the arm, dragging him forward onto the bridge. Involuntarily, Alex muttered an almost tremulous gasp. Even the two officers paused briefly to take in the view over their heads. The three, surrounded by a semicircle of blinking complex machinery, tended by silent and serious techs in gray overalls. Leaping high above the arc of machinery was a greater arc, the vault of the transparent dome glowing with the soft, indescribable blues and greens of Earth hanging overhead.
Alex?
The wonder in Alex's face changed to bewilderment. Subduing a sob, he took a step across the control room. In front of him, a man detached himself from a small group and rushed forward. "Dad!" Alex's famous father was standing there, back from Pluto.
Well, that's the story, Alex.
Dr. Harrison was concluding. When System Patrol, and of course the Academy, since they were sponsoring our project, hadn't heard from Pluto base in over a month, they sent out a drone after us. Nobody on Earth even knew we were missing, although you kids at the Academy must have had a good hunch something was up. When the drone reported no life in evidence, Admiral Haig and I, here, was appointed liaison commander. I understand the order for battle readiness was only days away.
Get on with it, man,
the Admiral demanded.
Get to the point.
Alex, I've been able to convince the good Admiral that such an order would be foolish, even dangerous. You see, Pluto base simply does not exist at all. At his father's words, Alex's heart gave a little leap. Here was adventure, but he was quickly squelched. The thought was shame. What of the men and women of Pluto base who were missing? The people with whom his father had worked so hard and so long? Where were they? What could have happened to it?
I wish I knew. When the colony vanished, as near as we can tell, on April 12, 2003, I was taking readings at the observatory on the dark side of the planet. Since the planet occluded line of sight from the base and Earth, I was unable to receive any of the radio demands for information. I had no way of knowing that anything unusual had happened back at base. When I returned Sunside after my tour, the base was, well, as though it had never been. Nothing was left to indicate where they'd all gone. Simply nothing. Since then, I've been in hypnosleep, riding the observatory's utility boat sunward. The patrol intercepted me as I entered Earth's orbit. Well, thank God you're alive and safe, Dad. But what could have happened to them? Joan and Dr. Threat, Professor Carberry, all of them. We've only one clue, son, and that's what I'm conferring with Admiral Haig about. The only thing I found at the base, our only lead, is a message I found cut deep into Pluto's crust. That's why I had them call off the task force. This is something too big and with far too many ramifications for the military to handle. If I'm right, we're dealing with something that is hardly new. Something that has happened time and time again in human history. And it's only now that we have a shot at investigating it scientifically. What I found was a single sentence written over 400 years ago in the lost colony of Roanoke. It's Raleigh's lost colony of Virginia all over again. Now as then, our only clue is the message, have gone to Croatan. And that, interrupted Admiral Haig, is what I don't understand. What does 16th century Virginia have to do with Pluto base? And I'd like to know, by God, how you came to be the only survivor.
And that, Alex, the doctor said, is our problem. Military minds being what they ought not to be, I seem to make an admirable suspect.
A suspect?
Just so. As far as anyone knows,
I may have hidden the colony in my back pocket, or so the military supposes. As sole survivor, I am to be allowed, mind you, the pleasure of heading up an exploratory mission to determine just what has happened to the missing colonist. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be allowed freedom of movement. I can go, but only under house arrest. With a nervous shrug of his shoulders, Colonel Kai broke his silence. Arrest isn't quite the term we've envisioned, Doctor. Military observation would be more accurate, and politic.
Politic or not, when a man isn't allowed to be alone or talk to his son alone, I call it arrest. When this mission is declassified, we'll see what the press calls it. Alex, I've called you into this because you're my son, and I know I can count on you. Because I'm under arrest and because this mission is, as the good admiral would say, classified hush-hush, I can't bring along a regular assistant. I have to choose from among military ranks, and I choose you. If this turns out wrong, it may cost you your commission. But I hope you'll come with me, boy. Alex had to grin. This was the chance of a lifetime falling into his lap. He'd get out to the furthest ends of the solar system years before his chums, and with a mystery to solve. It was just too much. But he knew the job ahead would be no pleasure trip. There was a mystery to solve, and his father's reputation to vindicate. What son wouldn't jump at the chance? Before he could give a response, however, a new voice sounded behind the group. Cool and yet pleasantly sweet, the voice repeated its question. Hello, is Dr. Harrison on the bridge? I'm supposed to report to him. Turning, Alex took stock of the newcomer. Blonde and tall, the body attached to the voice was all girl, and nearly every inch of that girl filled a policeman's uniform nicely. There were very few cops in space, and an active cadet soon got to know them all. She was a stranger. Of that Alex was sure, and he intended to correct that condition as soon as possible. Yes, officer? His father spoke with the precision of a public man used to going on record. I'm Dr. Harrison. The woman took in the small party with a quick appraising glance and slipped almost visibly into regulation persona. I'm Space Patrol Officer Dana Drew. I'm ordered to report to you as a personal aide for the duration of the Pluto expedition. In all matters not pertaining to the governance of the expedition, you are to consider yourself under arrest and in my charge. By order of the Space Patrol, Regulation Ordinance 952621. The doctor paused to give Colonel Kai a rueful look and said, Understood and accepted, under protest. And now, let's get on with it. Introductions, I think, are in order. Introductions were concluded all around, and planning began to get underway. With a smile in his voice, Alex asked Dana if she'd had a chance to stop by the commissary for breakfast. He was beginning to think that his father's arrest might not be such a hardship after all. His pleasant dreams were shattered, though, by Dana's response. That's Patrol Leader Drew, cadet, and I'm on duty, as I expect you are. Why don't you look out for yourself and, I might add, your father, and leave me to my job? I'm sure we'll have altogether too much opportunity to exchange views over the course of the next few months. Unabashed, Alex headed for the commissary alone. Behind him, over a sea of military epaulets, his father looked directly into Dana's eye. With a tired sigh, he turned back to his work. That's the end of Chapter 1 in No Frills Science Fiction.